In this video, I'm going to show you how to add some stuffing to make your own stuffy or pillow. So you would need whatever object you've been sewing that has two sides. Your needle might still be attached. If not, you'll need a little bit of an extra thread and needle to sew up your hole, and then you'll need some fluff. So I've left a little gap here, and I'm going to slowly take pieces of this stuffing. I don't want to undo my stitches, so I'm going to go ahead and carefully make sure that you get this in all sort of corners and crevices. If you have something with sort of more sharper corners or thinner crevices, you could also take something pointed and maybe try to help get some of that stuffing into those corners. Believe it or not, you don't want to really overfill what you're working on. That can make it kind of harder to sew together. So I would generally say you're probably going to need less stuffing than you think you do. You can see here I'm going to have to keep kind of poking that in there as I go to sew this up, because I don't want my stuffing sticking out of my seams. So I'm going to go ahead and scrunch this stuffing away from the edge. Now when I sew, I like to leave a tail on my needle. Maybe you've been taught to keep your thread double threaded, but if yours is single like mine with a tail, you can see that I can keep sort of pulling this thread out and just keeping adjusting the size of that tail as I go along. So stuff that stuffing down there. I'm going to go ahead and continue with my whip stitch until I get to the very end here. Keep that lined up. Hopefully you've paid attention to that as you've been sewing, so yours is still all aligned. And closer. Keep that stuffing in there. Keep that lined up. So I'm really sort of holding it and adjusting it every sort of stitch here as I get to the end. That one wasn't far enough away from the corner. Okay, and on my last stitch here, I actually need one more, and I'm going to sort of go back in that same hole where I started, and I lost my needle there. Now, if I had left a big enough tail at the start, then I could just tie these together, but I didn't. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to where I started here. Just making a little stitch here. So another way to end is to make a slight little stitch so you can hardly see it. And then I'm going to take the end back through that hole that I just made, sort of like you're tying a knot, and then I'm going to pull, and I'll show you that one more time. So I'm going to make a tiny, tiny stitch, and then you should have the loop of that thread. So like you're tying a knot, I'm going to take my needle back through that hole. I'm running out of thread here. Take that needle back through that hole, and then go ahead and pull, and that just sort of makes a secure knot. At this point, I can take my needle off, I can take my scissors, and I can trim next to my knot. Leave a little bit of extra space next to your knot, but just a little bit. And there, readjust your stuffing if you need to, readjust your stitches if you need to. And there is your finished stuffy.